Are we live
Yes,
now?
John. Yes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Thompson, Director of Fiscal Services with Long Beach City College, and we will call to order at 11 a.m. the Board of Trustees Audit Subcommittee meeting. This is the pre-audit meeting for the 2021-22 annual audit. This committee has two meetings, this meeting, and then in early November, November, early December, we have our exit meeting with the subcommittee to go over the draft of the completed audit report at that time before it goes to the full board. Item 1.1 is called to order for this meeting. Item 1.2 is public comments. A total of 3 minutes will be allotted for each speaker with a maximum of 20 minutes for each subject unless extended by the board president. And it has been reported by our interim board secretary, Michelle Reese, that there were no requests for in-person or written comments received for the audit subcommittee meeting. So I will move on to introduce the participants in the meeting today. First, for our audit firm, and it is the first year of this audit for CWDL CPAs. Joining us for this meeting are John Dominguez, partner, Stephen Curry, audit manager. For the district, we have Uduak Joe Untuck, the board president, Erlinda Chico, board vice president. Dr. Mike Munoz, superintendent president, is unfortunately out ill today. Marlene Drinkwine is Vice President, Business Services. I'm John Thompson, Director of Fiscal Services, and also with us, Conrado Duran, Deputy Director of Finance and Accounting. Item 1.3 is to discuss the preparation of the upcoming 21-22 annual audit. And the district-wide audit is a big procedure every year. It starts around this time with interim audit work. And then after our books close, the auditors come back in the fall and do their final field work. And to go over the details of the process, I'll hand it over to our auditors, audit partner, John Dominguez, and audit manager, Stephen Curry.
Excellent. Thank you, John. We're obviously excited to be here. As you mentioned, the district went through, the competitive RFP process, and our firm was awarded the audit. So we're excited to be here. Just a little bit of background on our firm. We audit over 35% of the colleges in the state. For Stephen and myself and the rest of our governmental audit team, California Community Colleges comprises the majority of our work. That's basically what we do year round. And so we're really pleased to be here, excited to talk a little bit about the agenda we have for you. We're just going to be going over some formalities on the services we're providing, what kind of our plan and our approach is, and then we're happy to answer any questions. I'll keep an eye out if there are any hands that come up. Feel free to stop us at any point, and we'll leave some pauses and some time at the end as well. Stephen, if you want to briefly go to the agenda, we're just going to cover letter to the committee and management, briefly go over the team that'll be working with Long Beach, go over the scope, specifically the services and deliverables, a brief audit and accounting update, and then some required auditor communication. So we'll jump right into, again, just a brief letter to the committee, obviously thanking the district, for the opportunity to perform these services for you. It's really kind of our philosophy to have, kind of an ongoing, evolving audit plan. So at any point, if risks come up, or if there's things that are identified that you'd like us to look at, we're certainly happy to do that. And we'll talk today about kind of the generalized plan. But before that, introduce you to a little bit of the team that'll be participating in the audit. So John has mentioned myself, Stephen on the team, some of our associates that, again, audit community colleges almost year round. A few K-12s we do as well, but primarily community colleges. You'll see the rest of the team there: Dan Johnson, Najee Corley, Kylie Nance, and some additional staff that aren't listed that'll help us as well during those various phases of the audit. So we can jump ahead, Stephen, to the services and deliverables. Perfect. We're doing the annual financial and compliance audit for the district that comprises both federal and state compliance. And so obviously we'll issue the audited financial statements at the end of the year. We'll also issue a letter on the process, any findings, any recommendations that we might have will also be delivered. We're going to be performing the financial and performance bond, as well as the auxiliary organization. So those are the scopes that we'll be focused on. And I'll let Stephen talk a little bit about some accounting and audit updates.
Yeah, I'm going to go over some of the updates for this year. One of the big ones is probably the biggest change this year is related to GASB 87. This is for the leases. This is going to be effective for fiscal year 21-22. Essentially, what this is going to do is, in the past, districts have always taken their leases and they've taken a look at it to see if they're a capital lease. If they're a capital lease, they would bring on a lease liability and the associated asset. Well, what this GASB is doing is also saying that we have all those operating leases. And essentially now what we're going to be doing is bringing those on also as liabilities on the district's books for the year. We're going to work with the district to kind of identify both the lessor and lessee relationships and kind of schedule out all those principal and interest payments and take a look at it from a material perspective to see if we need to bring on that lease liability for the 21-22 audit. Yes.
The new GASB 87, does it take the operating leases and treat them the same as one capital lease, or is it just for inventory itemization purposes?
It's going to be very similar to the capital leases. So they're going to be coming on as a liability on the district's books.
But you're saying the capital leases, we get insurance to cover that?
So we're focused mainly on the financial impact, not necessarily the insurance side, where historically the operating leases, you had just seen those expenses come through in the final audited financials. The change that this statement makes is you're going to see the value of that asset on the statement of financial position, and then the value of any remaining future lease payments will be listed as a liability.
Okay, thanks.
The next one is GASB 89 interest costs. This is really just a reversal of GASB 62. So when GASB 62 came around for all your construction, what they wanted to do was take a portion of that interest cost and allocate it to the asset, and then you would depreciate it as part of the asset's base. They have reverted that back now, and they're saying that you do not need to bring on a portion of the interest expense onto those projects and capitalize it. So going forward, you'll no longer have to do that, which I think most districts, when this was first released, did early implementation and stopped doing the GASB 62 interest costs.
Yes, we did that last year.
And then just kind of an update for the CARES Act. This is an ongoing program. So this year they did a no cost extension for everybody. So another year out to spend those funds. But as far as from an audit perspective, we will, as long as they're a major program, which I think they are for almost all districts across the state, they will be considered another program that's going to get audited again this year, as long as there's over $750,000 worth of expenditures. And essentially, as long as these no cost extensions go on and the district spends more than that, there'll be a major federal program that we're going to be looking at, just primarily the expenditures, the allowability of expenditures, and just some reporting requirements. So this will be most likely a major program for your district for the year.
And then moving into some changes on the state compliance side, we work closely with the state chancellor's office on the contracted district audit manual that comes out each year. It's the document that specifies the required procedures for all external auditors over state programs. And so just a few highlights, some revisions in there in section 427 for dual enrollment. That's concurrently enrolled, high school students also taking courses. They just removed one of the prior tests where we no longer have to test CCAP data. Non-CCAP, that is, we're only focused on the CCAP agreements. So we'll, examine those if they're applicable. On the GAN limit, a minor change, adding some language to clarify some recent legislation to the state appropriations limit. So there's a standard form. We go out, review that the district is in compliance there. And then on apprenticeship, minor clarification on some language in there, just specifying the period of data that should be covered with the annual audit period. And finally, the last revision is on the financial reporting side. In the actual annual audit report, they removed the requirement to have a reconciliation of the 311 to the audited financial statements, just because there's another reconciliation already in the audit as a requirement under GASB. So it was a bit redundant. So the state took one of those pages out. Looking ahead to some other retired procedures on the next slide, we have open enrollment and to be arranged hours that have come out of the CDAM, and they've added in a minor change to the scheduled maintenance requirement. Corrective action, if there were repeat findings, there's a new procedure for that. And then there's an addition on the student rep fee, a new section they've added in 492. So we'll be examining those as part of the audit as required by the Chancellor's office. And then as we move into the required auditor communication, I always like to maybe just take a step here to kind of talk about the overall structure. So the way that we and most firms structure the audit is in those phases Mr. Thompson had briefly mentioned. We do an interim phase, which we're actually in progress with at the moment. It's going absolutely fantastic. We're really, really pleased to see the level of detail and organization that the district and all departments, kind of exemplify. So we're really pleased with that. We hope to wrap up in the coming weeks, and then we'll be doing the federal compliance. So this first phase is really looking at internal controls and compliance. If we have, any recommendations for improvement, if we did have any findings, we're reporting those to management on a regular basis. Fortunately, we haven't identified any, but we've been in really good communication. So, we always like the no surprise approach. We really work closely and constantly in communication with management. If something did rise to the level of a finding, this committee would be made, aware of it in the form of, our letter to those charged with governance, as well as potentially in the audit. And then, so that first phase, the controls and compliance, we then move into federal compliance, which we're completing over the next several weeks, hopefully to be wrapped up within the next month. And then the final phase in the fall, where we're out at the district in October, we call that kind of the final audit phase or the substantive audit phase, where we're really drilling into all the financials. We're looking at the data submitted to the Chancellor's office, and we're performing procedures, examining all of those balances and accounts, and finally preparing the deliverables and the final report. So again, with that kind of context, we just briefly kind of mentioned that we do have some required communication. I mentioned the findings being one. Obviously, we have requirements under just generally accepted audit standards, as well as government audit standards, to report any of those misstatements, to report any deviations from best practices, which we always examine for. I think based on prior reports, the district does an excellent job with controls and compliance, and we'll continue to monitor that. But just a little summary of kind of what we look at, and I think the key is mentioning kind of materiality, and that we do testing on a sample basis. So we do not test 100% of every transaction. We test controls to gain an understanding of the process, and then we examine on a sample basis detailed transactions to make our conclusions that are statistically significant and relevant, but they don't offer 100% assurance. So that's just mentioning and making it clear that we are testing and developing those understandings on a sample basis. But outside of that, we'd be happy to answer any questions about our firm, our approach, the timelines, anything related to the audit for this 21-22 fiscal year.
I would just mention that we said, the next meeting with this subcommittee will be end of November, when the audit firm presents a draft of the audit reports for us to go over in detail before it goes to the full board. And we'll probably schedule that after a replacement for Marlene is in place, and then we can make sure to get on the replacement schedule. But we'll get that scheduled with both of our trustees as well.
I want to also add that this is a district-wide effort, that obviously John and Conrado work most closely with CWDL, but with every request for data, a multitude of departments and people and divisions may be involved in the collection and the provision of the data and the requested documents. So I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that this is a wide-ranging effort. John and Conrado do an excellent job of relaying requests for files and documents to other areas, and that those other areas are maybe not happy to provide and spend time to find those records, but they certainly do so very quickly, very promptly. And so it's one of the reasons we've been able to have such successful audits in the past, and really look forward to having successful audits in the future.
And I would just add to that, you're absolutely right. We tend to focus on our main contacts, but it's absolutely a district-wide, campus-wide effort. And in just looking, we're just in this initial phase of the audit. I think we're already in excess of 400 documents that have been provided in exchange. So it's a very detailed review, and certainly not the funnest experience, I'm sure, for everyone. But we really try to have that professional approach. We want all those requests in advance, recognizing and respecting that everyone has the day-to-day core operations of educating Long Beach's students. And the audit obviously is a priority, but we recognize that the day jobs don't go away when the auditors start asking for things. So we really appreciate the support, and it's like I said, been fantastic thus far.
John, a question that comes to mind: in the past couple years, our audit reports have been late due to the CARES Act, and now we refer to them as HERF funds, the higher education funds from the federal government. And that's due to the compliance supplement that's your guide to audit those federal funds has come out quite late. And so we had to, instead of the usual cycle is the audits are presented to the board in December, and the past couple of years we had to January or present a final report the previous year in February. Do you hear any word as far as the compliance supplement this year, the timing on that?
So what I'm hearing, John, is we're not anticipating the need for an extension. As Stephen mentioned, the federal agencies, Department of Ed, did grant that no-cost extension, the additional time. But I think we're finally kind of caught up on the required procedures for the HERF funds. So our anticipation, and in talking with the Chancellor's office, is we are not expecting a requirement or a need to extend beyond the traditional timeline. Obviously, if that changes, if there's something that does come on our radar, we'll be sure to communicate that right away. But my expectation, here in April, is that will not be necessary.
Great, that's definitely good news.
Hey, John, I don't know if we talk about process. I think this is an important role for the college or the district, for the public transparency and disclosure of our operations and then verifies that what we're doing is in compliance with state and federal laws and national accounting standards. And I put a link in the chat just in case, that lists our 20 years of audited financials are on the website. And I know this, once we get it finalized later in the year, we'll put on there. But so the next step is throughout the year, CWDL will be collecting documents, meeting with staff, reviewing information. We'll have a draft report, which will be presented to the committee, and then the final report will be presented to the full board. So this is the first of a 3-step annual process of public review of the college's financials. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think that's great, and thanks. I probably ran through some of that too quickly, but thanks, Board President Intuck. That's a great summary. Anything you'd add, John Dominguez?
No, that's absolutely spot on. Yeah, just a multi-step, very transparent, detailed process that we'll go through. So we look forward to those future meetings and having that draft report for you when we all get together again in the fall, late November, early December.
I would like to just note that this also includes the financial and performance audits of our bond funds. So in addition to the activities of the district's typical funds, we also have audit of both the financial and performance of our bond funds because they are Prop 39 bond funds.
Absolutely right. And we've got a separate team lead that heads up the bonds. So those will come right alongside the district financials. But you're right, we'll be focused on those Prop 39 required elements of the financial and performance audit.
Which is also for the public transparency, that reassurance to our community that we have spent all bond funds in accordance with the bond measures.
All right. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
We say bonds, we're talking about construction bonds, and that was the parcel tax that was on the ballot. I think Measure LB and Measure E that were voted on over the last 10 years that are, I think, 30 years in term going forward. But also we have like a bond rating or like can we talk about the difference with the bond rating and how that's changed in maybe the last couple of years, or it's been consistent?
We have a bond rating, and I don't recall exactly what it is, but it's not the highest rating possible for community college districts, but it's very high with the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And we were able to, gosh, it might be like 5 years ago, we were able to get a step up in the rating with Standard & Poor's. And those ratings are based in large part because the bonds are paid off by the property taxes of the district. So a big part of that is the tax base of the district that we're in. And also a big part of that is management and the management history, solid management, solid audit reports that the rating agencies see, and having strong reserves for unanticipated events, things like that. But I forget, the ratings are like AA or
I'm looking on page 15.
Yeah, John, I think
is AA for S&P
and
A2 for Moody's. Yeah.
And then we typically, when we evaluate, kind of the bond, there's some industry respected scales and charts. And so you have, a prime, which is your AAA, and then high grade, which is, very, very, very next tier, extremely, extremely, high. And that's where the AA and the AA2 would be categorized. So, those are certainly at the upper end of the spectrum of the credit rating agencies.
And John was absolutely correct. We did get an increase in those rating agencies shortly after I joined, and then those ratings were recently affirmed with our most recent bond issuance and refunding. So those ratings were reaffirmed at that level. What's interesting is that unlike a credit rating for an individual or a private industry firm, our credit rating also has a relationship to the value of our property tax or assessed valuation, as well as what the community we serve as a whole are doing, because our bonds are secured by those local property taxes. And so it's not just a reflection of our financial health, but also those community factors, changes in assessed valuation, housing markets, industry changes, that type of thing as well. But we have, like I said, successfully increased and then had affirmed those higher credit ratings.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with personal credit ratings, those ratings help us to get lower interest rates, which is good. We're always trying to reduce the interest rates on our bonds with refundings that we've done several in the past. And it also helps to be a little bit lucky. We issued $150 million in bonds in the fall. And if we were issuing right now, I know the interest rates would be higher. So it's good. We've got a lot of good interest rates for our taxpayers right now.
That's great. Thank you.
There questions or comments? And you know, it was mentioned that this is a district-wide effort. I mean, we really rely on the governance and the leadership from the trustees, and we appreciate both of your time here today and the guidance and the support we get from administration. Conrado is our point person, so he's a big player in this audit with our audit firm. But as mentioned, Conrado gets all the requests, but he sends them out to all the different departments to gather the information and documentation that the auditors need. So big thanks to everyone involved. We can sign off unless there's anything else before we adjourn the meeting.
Just want to say thank you and welcome to our new CWDL. I got to get the acronym down, and John and team. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Our pleasure for the opportunity. We look forward to seeing everyone in the fall.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And adjournment is item 2.1 on the agenda. The next regular meeting for the Board of Trustees will be held on April 27th, 2022. Closed session begins at 4:30. Open session at 5:30. Thank you all, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.